Hello, Tech Pros, episode 182.
Welcome to the podcast where I chat with professionals who are getting the job done using technology 7 days a week. Each week, we start with Motivation Monday. Tuesday is about productivity, Wednesday, leadership, Thursday, technology, Friday, people and communication, Saturday, entrepreneurship, and Sunday, being unplugged. All right, let's get started.
Hello, Tech Pros. This is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to be here for the sixth and final episode of our D&D campaign series, or a role-playing game series, in which we go through, first of all, what are all the different things about role-playing games? Why are they fun? How do they impact your life and your business? And how do you create one? How do you get involved in one? How do you play one? How do you create one? So if you want to get all the action, if this is the first episode you've listened to, or maybe you've caught a couple others, but you want to go back and hear the whole series front to back and get more information on the campaign that we're building in this series, and the systems that I play, the games that I play, and even how to play with me, how to get involved in the campaign that I'm building and get to play role-playing games and Dungeons & Dragons with me, Chad Bostic. If you want to do that, if that sounds interesting to you, go to hellotechpros.com/DND. That's D, the letter N, and D, like Dungeons in Dragons. DND, hellotechpros.com/DND. I'll send you the full series, both the audio files or links to the audio files, as well as the show notes for each of those episodes. So kind of to recap, let's go back and recap. Part 1 was about the 10 business lessons learned in role-playing games. Part 2 was how to interview players for your D&D campaign by playing board games. So that's a great way to introduce new players that have not played role-playing games to just sitting around the table and playing games together and kind of seeing who would be a good fit for your game. Part 3 was picking a genre and picking a system for your role-playing game. So we're talking specifically about Dungeons & Dragons later on, but there's a lot of other genres besides high fantasy. There's a lot of other systems besides D&D. And so there's plenty of options out there for you if D&D is not your style. If it is your style, or if you want to learn about creating an epic story, a really epic campaign, or the process to creating that, Part 4 is called Developing an Epic D&D Campaign Story, but it's really applicable to pretty much any system or any genre, where I go through the process that I use, which is a lot like writing like a 5-part novel or novella series, right, where there's part 1, book 1 is really introducing the characters and introducing kind of the overall landscape and what the main goals and problems are. And then as we progress through each of the novels, as we progress through the trilogy or the quintuplet, the 5-part, whatever that thing's called, the 5-part series, we get to part 3 and stuff has really gotten bad. And part 4 is where they start to try to resolve it, try to look for the final solution. And then part 5 is the resolution of the overall series. And through that, you're going to have a lot of adjustments in locations and in thematic things and what the characters are feeling and some of the other characters besides the main characters. And so we talk about that in part 4. And then coming back in the last episode, part 5, which was episode 175, you can find that at hellotechpros.com/175 for the previous episode, where we talked about, okay, now that we've got the overall structure, now that we've got the overall campaign that we want to play in this big 5-part series, this 5-part epic campaign story that we want to tell, what are the first steps? And the first steps are really, really about fleshing out a lot of the details from the beginning. We don't have to worry so much about the end of the campaign or the book 2, 3, 4, and 5 of our multi-book series. What we really need to do is flesh out the details on that part 1, that first act of our 5-part play, if you will. And so we spent a lot of time in the last issue, in the last podcast, talking about inspiration. Where do you get your inspiration for your campaign? Where are the different cultures coming from? What are the different people that inspire you, sort of thing? And so I talked about in my Homebrew campaign that I'm building here on this series, it pulls a lot of inspiration from indigenous peoples throughout history. So like the Lakota Indians, the Seminole Indians, the Mayans, the Maoris, a lot of these types of cultures from different parts of the world, different parts of time, and the different locations, types of locations they lived in, whether it was islanders or whether it was on the coastal area, whether they were in the tropics or they were plainsmen, and how each one of those different cultures kind of brings its own elements, its own flavor, its own flair to a story and flair to the campaign. And so how can you take inspiration from each of those, weave them together into, these are the types of people that we're going to be interacting with, right? So we're not going to call them Lakotas. We're not going to call them Mayans. We're not going to call them Kayapos, right? We're going to call them something different. And I'll leave that up to you. I'm not going to go into a lot of details here because I want to leave some to the imagination. I want you to be able to come in and think of how you would play this and what would be the names of your characters and the names of your tribes in your game if you put this together. And tell you what, if you are interested on the specific names that I call each of these tribes as I put these tribes together, as I put this story together, again, you can go to hellotechpros.com/DND and get access to all the notes for this D&D campaign that I'm putting together, and then find out how you can play it with me. Okay, the other thing that we talked about in the last episode was the location. So how to really discover what a great location, starting location is, and that is based off of this culture, right? First, you need to know the people that are involved. That's the most important part, like the overall people, what type of people are involved. And second of all, where is the action taking place, right? Is it in the demon pits of the underworld? Is it in the astral plane out in basically the stars and the thoughts and the minds? Is it more of a jungle setting or more of a plains setting? Where is it, right? Is it a cityscape? And so in our example, we're talking about these tribes all gathered together to really discover commonalities between each of the conflicts that they're having, where all the primordial elements, the earth, fire, air, and water, are really just going freaking crazy around the whole world, or around the whole location where these guys are trying to live their lives. And they're coming together. They're bringing all the tribe elders and the tribe leaders and the chieftains and the heroes together to try to find some resolution, or at least talk about what are some potential options, or what are the causes to these problems. And so the area that these people are meeting at is in the kind of crossroads where the tributaries meets the main river, and we're going to say that there's an island out there in the middle of this main river, the Nalgintes River, and this is a great place, great setting for us to have our characters meet for the first time. So that's what we talked about in the last episode. In this episode, I'm going to continue a little bit on the people, what type of people. So we talked about where we got the inspiration for these types of people, these types of cultures, these types of tribes that we're going to have in our campaign. But we also need to decide if we're going to play D&D, right? So in this example, we're going to play Dungeons and Dragons. What are the races and cultures that we're going to have in this example? So we took some inspiration from these different tribes, but all of those tribes, you know what? They're all human, because it was real life inspiration that I pulled from. But how can we turn that into the diverse races and cultures and monsters and so forth that are in Dungeons and Dragons? So it's up to you, but I would look at the player handbook and also the monster manual and all the resource guides to kind of see what different races are playable by characters, playable by players in Dungeons & Dragons. So some great examples are the humans, the elves, the half-elves, and even going into some of the more monster races like the orcs and the goblins. Other races, I can't remember which editions they're in and which they're not in, but tieflings and dragonborn. There's just so many different types of players that you could play, or monsters or races that you could play in your campaign. So as the game master, you needed to decide before the players start asking you questions, kind of have some guidelines on what races are available and what races are not available. And if your player really, really, really wants to play a like a shade, a shadowborn person, they need to have a really good excuse or reason of why that character is there in this land, where your land may not have that type of character available. Or maybe you just have a hard and fast rule and say, you know what, in this campaign I only want these types of characters available, these types of races available. So think about that, and then think about, okay, going back to the tribes that you're going to be building, the different cultures that you're going to be putting into place here. Are they mono race cultures, right? Is a certain tribe nothing but elves? Is another tribe nothing but orcs? Are there mixed race tribes where this particular tribe has the best and bravest warriors from they don't care which, right? They don't care what race you come from, so long as you are strong and you're tough and you're able to support yourself and you have the right mental mindset to support yourself and to support everyone else, and you're open-minded, right? So each culture, each tribe is going to have kind of its own boundaries and its own things that they respect and things that they fear and things that they value. So as you're putting your particular tribes together, your particular cultures together, it's a great idea to really, really think about the value, the respect, and the fear that each one of these cultures or each one of these races intrinsically has or historically has, because that will help you as a game master really create compelling motivations for the players to do things or to not do things later on, right? It is a great way to build depth of the story, and it's a great way to build campaign hooks and quest hooks and even conflict between the players and conflict between the characters, right? So if one culture really, really values and respects, maybe they value family and they respect strength and they fear outsiders. Okay, well that's okay. They value family, they respect strength, and they fear outsiders. What does that tell you about the culture? How are they going to act when an outsider comes in that is more of like a mage, right? And they have magic power, but on the outside they're a weakling and they're not tough. How do you think this tribe is going to react to them, right? If two characters met that had different things that they respect or different things that they feared, how would they interact amongst each other? Okay, and then if your character, if your player is from a certain tribe, but they have counter beliefs, they have counter values, counter respects, and counter fears to the organization where they kind of come from, they fit in, right? Maybe they come from the society that's very barbaristic, right? They're barbarians and they are all about crushing their enemies through strength and dominating through will and so forth. But your player is from that society, but they don't believe the same thing. They believe something different. Then would they be respected in their society, or would they be an outcast to that society? Would they be a more natural fit to one of the other societies, but the other society doesn't like their race or doesn't approve of them because their parents or their lineage comes from some other culture? So that's some really deep things to think about. And this is not something that you have to have everything fleshed out before you start playing, but just start doing some thinking on this, because I think a lot of game masters that I see just kind of get stuck in the trap of the tropes, right? We look to movie tropes, we look to book tropes, and we say, okay, well, we need a jerk, and we need a patsy, and we need the guy with the money, and we need the sexy girl, and all this kind of stuff. And that's okay, but let's really look. I'm gonna implore you or challenge you to really look at the depths of these personal attributes in individuals and as society as a whole, and think about how that's going to affect individuals that fit in with that culture or don't fit in with those values, and how it's going to allow people to have really dynamic interactions as we play the game. Okay, once you have come up with these different races, these cultures, these locations, and these the types of people that are going to be playing in your environment in your campaign. The next thing I like to do is think about the associations. So each tribe is their own association, right? So the tribe that is inspired by the Lakotas is kind of an association. It's all the Lakota type people, and all the tribe that's based off the Mayans, right? That is an association in and of itself. But even within each tribe, there's probably going to be different factions, and you don't necessarily have to have each one of these associations or each one of these factions or these guilds represented in every single tribe or every single location, but you should have kind of a peppering of them without. And I wouldn't just have one where one tribe is nothing but spies and scouts and the other tribe is nothing but shamans and priests, right? You're going to have a kind of a mix of some of these throughout. So let me give you some examples. So one type of association may be around gathering information, right? So think of spies and scouts, rangers, right? People who are out and about. They're trying to figure out what's going on. They're trying to come up with information. They're trying to say, here's where the animals are. Here's where the rivers are. This is what's going on with the weather. Here's what's going on with the other communities outside of us. Not necessarily to interact with each of those things, but just kind of do some research, to look at it, to observe, and then to report back. Maybe do some interaction, maybe do some fighting, maybe do some heroics, right? But really, that group, that association is all about gathering information. So you could have a spy network. You could have a group of rangers. You could have a league of scouts. And each one of them would have different means or mechanisms or purpose, means or methodologies, but they would all kind of have the same purpose, which is gathering information. The next association or another association may be spiritual guidance. So think of shamans, think of priests, think of people who are really looking at the spiritual health of the tribe itself, as well as the connection to either the gods or connection to the ancestors or connection to the animal spirits. Whatever that culture or that tribe really values, these are the people that are going to be kind of like the potentially the gatekeepers or potentially the teachers, the inspirational folks, the motivational folks, the guides that are really going to help individual people as well as help the overall tribe build a better connection and understand deeper this connection with whatever spiritual thing they value, right? Whether it's gods, whether it's deities, whether it's demons, whether it's nature, whether it's themselves, whether it's their family members and ancestors, or just spirits in the air, whatever it is that they worship. The next group, a very popular one, right, is going to be all about safety and protection. So think of warriors and hunters, right? People who are out there with spears and shields and the tough guys, right? They're really putting their bodies on the line every day to both support the tribe's needs, like their food needs, as well as providing protection. So protecting the other inhabitants against raiders or against monsters. So they're going to be pretty tough folks. Another group may be built around technology or tools or things or items, right? So think of craftsmen or engineers or builders. Depending on the primitiveness or the advancedness of the civilization, right? They may be just the potters, the people who create pottery, or they may be the folks who create the arrowheads, right? I can't remember the name. What's the name of that, right? You've got the Fletchers, the people who make the arrows, and then what's the people that make the arrowheads? I can't think of the name of that. Anyway, the artisans, right? It's like artisan communities, artisan association, artisan guilds who are building. And in advanced civilizations, it might be engineers or builders who are building the pyramids, who are building bridges, who are building roads and aqueducts and so forth. So, each association is going to have different means and mechanisms based off of the culture of that individual people or that individual tribe that's representing. Another association might be associated with the arcane energies. So think of the mystics and the mages, the sorcerers, right? The fortune tellers, the witches, right? The people who are into the arcane or into the occult energies. Another one may be all about personal growth and education, teachers, mentors, guides. And this might be an overall association like the Teachers Guild, right? Or just individual teachers within each tribe. Or it could be teachers or guides or mentors for each one of these other associations, right? So there may be the overall person who teaches people how to become a shaman, right? Maybe in one tribe it is an apprenticeship, and other tribes it is more of going to school. In other tribes, it's maybe they have some sort of rite of passage to be able to understand it. Other tribes maybe doesn't have teachers and mentors, and it's up to each individual to really figure out their own place in life and how to exceed and how to excel. And then the last one that I would want to touch on here are the folks that are all about the intertribal communications, the languages, the diplomacy, the trading, the finances, the marketplaces. So that would be the merchants, the traders, the caravans. These folks are going to have more interactivity with each of the other tribes and any of the outsiders than potentially many of these others, right? So maybe the spies and scouts see and report on what's going on. Maybe the warriors fight within each other. The mystics and mages may be like using some sort of their crystal balls and whatnot to kind of spy on what the other tribes are doing. But this group, the merchants and traders and caravans, they're all about literally creating economies by buying and selling and trading commerce, right? They're in the world of commerce, and those people are going to have more interactivity with the other tribes than anyone else because they have their products or their services, and they're going to take their products and services to the other tribes. They're going to meet at the rivers, and they're going to, they're going to be the ones that are telling the builders and engineers, you know what, we need another bridge here because we've created a trade alliance with this other tribe, and we need a bridge so that we can take our carts and our horses and our goods and services, across the river to this other location. So each one of these is going to have a lot or a little impact or no impact on each individual tribe. It just depends on, again, the culture of that tribe and what they value, what they respect, and what they fear. Okay, so in just a moment, that's that was the overall. What are the overall people and cultures and races and associations? In just a moment, I'm going to get very specific and talk about how we build the NPCs. What major non-player characters do we need to have in our campaign when we first kick it off to get our characters, to get our players really involved with, like, specifically who are they talking to, who are they interacting with, and how are they going to interact? But first, we're going to take a quick break and thank our sponsors. Chad Bostic here, and I've got a very special announcement concerning next week. Next week is going to kick off my very first Signature Series week. That is one full week dedicated to a single course, a single topic, and that topic next week is career development, specifically my Career Hyperdrive course, how to get unstuck in your career and launch your career back into hyperspace. Now, we're going to have 7 full days of content, and what you're going to get out of it is motivation that you need to overcome your biggest career obstacles, productivity tips to help you crush it at work without killing your personal life, leadership training that will build your respect and influence across the organization without needing to move into the management tracks,
a technology mastery blueprint that's going to guide you through the process of selecting the right technology for the right problem every time, social engineering hacks to break into the elite inner circles and get a seat at the adult table, entrepreneurship tactics that will raise your value and salary within your organization and increase your reputation and negotiation power to the marketplace, and the peace of mind to unplug from the job without anxiety or guilt. Now, if this sounds good to you, you do not want to miss any of the episodes next week. And you're going to want to sign up for the course, the online course, because you're going to get access to all of the takeaways and all of the homework sessions. There will be homework. You have to do the homework in order to get unstuck. You can't succeed just by listening. So go to hellotechpros.com/career to sign up for the free course and get access to all the content. Again, that's hellotechpros.com/career. Okay, we're back and talking about our D&D campaign, customizing our D&D campaign. We've just been talking about, in the past episode, where we get our inspiration for the peoples, like the overall cultures and tribes in our new campaign and what locations we're going to be playing in. And just before the break, we were talking about how to decide what races and cultures are really going to be in our campaign, what they value, what they respect, what they fear, and the associations of these races or associations of these tribes, right? There's got the spy network, you've got the priest who offers spiritual guidance, you've got your warriors and hunters for each tribe. Maybe some tribes have builders and engineers, and others just have simple craftsmen or artisans. And then there are the merchants and traders and caravans who really help create like a network and communicate, breeding word between different tribes, right? So maybe there's tribe A and tribe C, and they hate each other and they can't get along, and they're always warring and fighting. But there's an intermediary. There's a tribe B who kind of has neutral relationships or pretty decent relationships with both of them and acts as that mediator to bring goods and services and knowledge and wisdom and information between the tribes. Maybe tribe B wants to use that caravan as a infiltration into tribe A and so forth. So there's a lot of different conflict potentials there, and a lot of good interaction examples there. But now let's get specific on who our players are going to be interacting with. What are the NPCs that we have to have in our campaign, at least in the first couple of sessions in our campaign, to make it fun, to make it interactive? What we don't want is to have the players all sit around the table and we as Game Master goes, okay, what do you guys want to do now? And they go, oh, like, what can we do? We go, well, I mean, it's an open world. You can pretty much do whatever. And one guy's going, I have no idea. And another guy goes, I want to invent a game of golf. And someone else goes, I want to practice my lute and learn how to sing, be the best lute player in the world and play for all the taverns. And you're like, okay, great. Now, how can I take each one of those things and... This is dumb. This is stupid. And all of a sudden, everybody loses interest because there's nothing tying them all together. Well, what will tie them all together is very compelling, engaging NPCs that give them reasons to come together and give them reasons to band together and work together, or give them reasons to go off and do their own things. So there's 3 types of NPCs, kind of 4. I'll give you 3.5 types. I don't know. Different types of NPCs. The first one is just kind of neutral, right? So we'll call it 4. We'll call it 4 types. The first one is just neutral, right? People who are there who don't really, aren't really for our characters, our main characters, our player characters, and they're not against it. Their background, their backdrop, they're just more flavor, more in-depth. And these types of people, I would put the least amount of work into. So if you have an NPC, if you have a non-player character in your campaign, that each one of those individuals should have a purpose. It should have one of these 3 purposes, or multiple of these. We'll talk about how you can have multiple purposes in just a moment. But they should probably have one of these 3 attributes. But sometimes you're just going to have extra
people, right? Extra people around the campfire, extra people in the tavern, extra people in the war, in the battle, extra people that need rescuing, and they don't really serve a purpose other than to, kind of like in Star Trek, they're the red shirts, or kind of like in any movie, they're the extras in the background. They don't really have a part. They don't really have speaking parts, or if they do, they're just kind of one-liners or whatever. They're just there to show the scope and the bigness of the campaign. So that's why I kind of say it's 3 or 4. It's really 3 main types and then the neutral people. Okay, so let's dive into the 3 main types. I'll just run through them real quick. They're informative NPCs, information NPCs, they're helpful NPCs, and they're antagonist NPCs. So let's dive into each one of them. Now, your informative NPCs are probably the most important ones that you have to have in your campaign, especially in the very beginning, because these characters are the ones that are going to provide the adventure hooks. They're the ones that are going to provide the quests. They are the quest givers or quest suggesters for your players who are going to be playing this game. Okay, so informative NPCs are they could be people who just have tons of rumors. They are well connected. Maybe they are in the merchants or traders or caravans, and they just know a little bit about what's going on across the world, right, or across all of the tribes. Or maybe they are they are a wife to one of the tribal elders, or maybe they're a husband to one of the tribal elders, and they're not the main character that tells you what you can and can't do, but they're more the people that says, hey, I bet you didn't know this, but XYZ is going down. Like, this is happening. This is going down. Other informative NPCs that could inspire the players to do something may have visions, or they may have premonitions. So if you think of your shamans and your priests, or your mystics and mages and sorcerers, or even just your normal everyday person, but for some reason or another, they're having these visions and these premonitions, and they kind of see the future, they see the far distance, and that can be used as inspiration to or information to tell the players, which can be used as inspiration to inspire them to go do something, right? You want to, at the end of the day, you want to try to convince your players, the people around the table, that they need their characters, the heroes in the game, to get off their butt and actually go do something. And it's up to you whether or not you want them to do something very specific, or just make up their own rules, make up their own goals and go after it. But you want to give them a lot of ideas of things that they can be doing. So you want to point out some injustices in the world. You want to point out some problems in the world. You want to point out some things that they care about because of the tribes that they come from, because of the backgrounds that each of those characters have. You want to point some things out that really resonate with those characters as, hey, somebody's got to do something about it. And you know what? We're here. Let's do it. Let's go for it. So rumor mills, visions, premonitions, spirits, ancestors, and ghosts is a good one. So maybe the NPC is not a human, or is not an orc. Maybe it is the ghost of orc's presence, right? Orc's past, orc's future. Maybe it is the spirits of the jaguar, or the spirits of the redwood tree that is really speaking to these characters and letting them know what's going on. Maybe it's their ancestors coming to them in a dream, or walking with them and speaking to them as if they were there, right? The Obi-Wan Kenobi, the dead Obi-Wan Kenobi. Spoiler alert: Obi-Wan Kenobi dies. Spoiler alert: everyone dies. Valor Morgulis. Anyway, you're going to have a lot of different types of informative NPCs, and I wouldn't rely on just one, right? Don't rely on just a single quest giver. What I like to do is throw out lots of information, especially at the very beginning of a campaign, lots of information on several things that are going down, several things that are bad, and then have the players kind of make the choice and have discussions amongst themselves and really make the choice of, okay, what are we going to do first? Are we going to go save the village that's under attack by dragons, or are we going to try to go talk to the animal spirits deep in the jungle? What are we going to do first? Let's go. Let's have some discussion here and talk about it and make a decision. And if the players can't agree at the beginning, that's a good thing. Have them talk it out. Have them discuss, and you can be the mediator that helps resolve the decision and come up with the first decision of what they're going to do. So these are the quest givers, the informative NPCs. The next section of NPCs that we're going to talk about pretty briefly are the helpful NPCs. So these are the people that are there to help the NPCs. They're not there to hassle, to get in the way. They're there to help, to provide helpful things to the NPCs, right? They may have supplies, or they may have gear. They may be the blacksmiths or the weaponsmiths. They may be the merchants. They may be parents or guardians, or they may be whatever their capacity is, right? But they are there to help the NPCs and physically supply them something, or emotionally supply them with the support they need to go forward. There's also, in the helpful NPC categories, think of like healers and blessing, right? In that spiritual category, or in the priestly category, right? The people that are especially in the first levels of the campaign, when they're not very strong, when the characters and the heroes are not very strong, they're going to run into trouble. And when they run into trouble, who are they going to turn to? They need to come back and get healing. They need to come back and get blessing. They need to come back to home base and really recover their wounds and rest and heal up and really reflect on what's going on. And is this job, me being a hero, is this right for me? And the helpful NPCs, may not agree with everything that they're doing. They may even be helpful, but in a crusty, stodgy kind of jerk way. They may come across as jerks. They may have a really brusque attitude or limited communication style. But at the end, they're really there about helping. It may be even the other troops, the other individuals within their tribes just want to help. Like, hey, when you tell us that we need to go and build a dam on this part of this river to flood this other area and put out a wildfire, okay, we trust you and we will help. Maybe we don't want to dam the river because we know how it's going to affect the other tribes downstream, but we need to do it in this circumstance in order to create, this flood which wipes out the wildfire or something, right? So they're helpful. They're there to help. And when you have the helpful NPCs, have them be helpful. Have them honestly be helpful, right? So if you have the person who has the supplies and have the gear, don't always turn that person into the person that's just going to like nickel and dime them to death and constantly be there to antagonize and to not want to give up the best goods or to overcharge, right? We want the heroes to have some people that they can lean on and say, I just need some help. Can you help a brother out? Can you help a sister out? And these helpful NPCs are going to be there to do that. The final group of NPCs that we want are the antagonists. Boo, hiss, pss, ooh, bad guys. They're not necessarily evil. They're not necessarily bad guys, even though I just said boo, hiss, bad guys. They're not necessarily bad guys, but they are going to be antagonists to the NPCs. So they're going to be challenging the NPCs both in physical might. They're going to be challenging them, especially in ways of thinking, right? So if the NPCs decide that they want to go fight the wildfire first, there's probably other people who resent that. And they say, hey, listen, this wildfire is no big deal. It'll go out. Like trees get struck by lightning, grass gets spontaneously combust when it's molding, and things happen all the time. There's wildfires all the time. But my area has these earthquakes, and we got to prevent these rock slides. I need you to help me with there. And they're going to be really, really pissed off when the characters decide to go do something else. So these antagonist NPCs are going to be there to really thwart the characters and to provide just some drama, right? They're there to provide some drama and some conflict, not necessarily people that they fight and people that they have to kill, but people that they interact with, but in a dramatic manner. It might come to blows. It might come to fight. It might come to killing each other, but not necessarily. So if the answer for every conflict is your characters pull out their swords and their daggers and their bows and arrows and just start slaughtering everybody, well, you just got a hack and slash campaign. And that's cool. That's great. But that's not what we're building here. We're building a very engaging campaign that players are going to want to come back to over and over and over because of the richness and depth in the role-playing and the all the different NPCs that they interact with, right? So these antagonist PCs or antagonist NPCs, at the very beginning, there might be one per PC that really fights them or interacts with them on the proving ground. So in last week's episode, in episode 175, we talked about fleshing out the first campaign, and at the very end, I gave you some ideas for what those first quests may be, those example quests to kind of get people hooked on, okay, yeah, we're going to do this. So they may be, I would suggest having at least one NPC per player character, one non-player character per player character that's really designed to challenge the way they think in those initial discussion quests that we have, where I talked about that, not really a quest, but that first discussion interaction where each of the players is kind of introducing the tribes and talking about what their tribes value and what the tribes are all about and all the drama that's been happening in their area and how they can help, how they, the tribe, and they, the individual hero, can help, the overall ecosystem and help everybody. So there's probably one NPC per player character that's going to be an antagonist, and it might be it could be a person from another tribe that goes, nay, no, that's bad, that's wrong, they're an idiot, they're stupid, or they're weak, or they're not smart, or whatever. They're going to pick on these characters are going to pick on that character's weak points, right? Because each character is going to have something that they're very strong at and something that they're very weak at. And so these antagonist NPCs are going to be there to point out the weaknesses of your player characters. It may be someone who kind of has the ear of the elder of that PC's tribe, right? So if the player character is from, let's say, the plainsmen, and they are a hunter, and they're all about chasing the buffalo or chasing the animal of choice, right? And hunting them down. And they're there to represent that tribe, but the tribal elders are also there. Maybe this antagonist NPC is from their own tribe, but they have the ear of the chieftain, right? Maybe it's the chieftain's son-in-law or daughter, or the chieftain's favorite shaman or something. And this person is just there to point out the weaknesses in your PC and your player character, and say, hey, this person, she's a great scout. She's very fierce. She's a decent warrior, but she's not very wise, and she won't make the right decisions, right? And to really point out the weakness, whatever weaknesses and attributes or weaknesses and skills that your players have, that's what you want these antagonist NPCs to do. It could be an entire an entire tribe or entire race is the antagonist to the NPCs. And again, I would have multiple of these, right? So multiple antagonists in the proving grounds, multiple antagonists in like the tribe elders, and also maybe one or two tribes or races that are not represented by the PCs, right? So your player characters, after you create all the characters, you realize, wow, our area has maybe 7 or 8 or 6 tribes, but our players only come from 3 or 4 of them. That means that there's some that are not represented by the players. And so maybe one of the tribes that's not representative is helpful, and the other is is Antagonists, right? And they constantly are belittling and berating, and they're constantly trying to get their hero, right, onto the squad, or the hero that is represented, that represents that tribe or that culture, is on their little squad, is on their team, but they're constantly being kind of a pain in the neck and not going along with what the group consensus is, or they're always trying to play off one character to the other and get things riled up. So again, these antagonist NPCs are not necessarily the bad guys. It's not the demons and the dragons and the monsters, or just the murderers and rapists and super bad guys. When I say antagonists, what I mean is the people that know what buttons to push just to piss them off, right? Just to get your players pissed off and get them excited, and again, to give them a reason to do something or to not do something. So if you mix all three of these together, these informative NPCs, the helpful NPCs, and the antagonist NPCs together, and come up with at least a few examples of each one of those to pepper into your first episode or your first session that you're going to play with, you're going to have a much richer, deep campaign, and you're going to have a much richer, deep experience with your players. And I think you're going to find that you can engage them and get them hooked on your campaign a lot easier than if you just have kind of static or bland or boring NPCs, or you don't really understand what are the characters missing, right? If everybody's helpful and everybody's providing them the great information to get them to where they're going, and then they go and they fight the demons and the dragons and the evil spirits and the wildfires and all that kind of stuff, whatever it is, and then they come back to town, they're like, yay, we did it, and then everybody's happy. That's great. But if there's nobody there pushing their buttons, if there's nobody there being that antagonist that's not necessarily threatening them physically, it's gonna lack a little bit of depth. So look at adding these characters in, all three types of these characters, and it's going to be a lot of fun. You guys are going to have such a blast if you're able to weave in different aspects of these characters. Again, it's all about diversity. The more diverse you can make your landscape, the more diverse you can make your non-player characters, the people and monsters and things in your environment, the different locations that you can put in, the more compelling it's going to be for your players at the table or players online, and they're going to want to play your game a lot more, and you're going to end up having campaigns that last a long time. So that's it. The next steps are, let's play a game. I want to play this game. Now that I've spent a few weeks putting some ideas together around this game, it makes me go, gosh, Chad, like you're not playing enough. And the reason I started these Sunday Being Unplugged games is to talk about why it's important for us to unplug and to do some of the things we love. Well, I love playing role-playing games like this, if you can't tell. I love creating them, and I love playing them. I don't have a group right now that I'm playing with, so if you want to apply to be in this campaign that I'm putting together, or if you're listening to this sometime in the future and you want to apply to be a guest character in the campaign that we are playing right now, visit hellotechpros.com/DND. That's D in the letter N and D. And there's a little sign up form there at the bottom. I'll send you an email with some choices on, do you want to run your own game, or do you want to be a regular player or a guest player in my campaign? And then we'll just take it from there. And I will entertain all interested parties. And you know what? We might even turn that into a spin-off podcast where we have our own podcast based off of this campaign that we're kind of building together in this series, the 6-part series. And any of the folks, the audience members out there that want to join and become part of the action and to play it, and whether we record it or not, I think it's a blast, and I would love to meet you. I'd love to find out what you're interested in and what kind of campaigns you like playing. So again, visit hellotechpros.com/DND. I have the links to all 6 of these episodes in the 6-part series, as well as information on how to play this game. And until next time, take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/182.
Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe to this channel, and check back tomorrow. This has been Sunday Being Unplugged, but tomorrow my featured guest and I will get fired up and ready to face the week with Motivation Monday. On Tuesday, we'll be discussing productivity, Wednesday, leadership, Thursday, technology, Friday, people and communication, Saturday, entrepreneurship, and back again on Sunday to get unplugged. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.